the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America. And of course, ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80. Number to call up as always is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Lots of stuff to get into. About to get into some stuff. It's time for Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones. Best networks. No contracts. Lots of stuff to get into today. Some basketball stuff with LeBron in Cleveland. That's something worthy of getting into. How my words get misconstrued and how I have to correct the error of other people's ways, which is something I love to do on radio at my discretion, of course. We'll get into all of that. Larry Nassar, the disgraced, serial sexual molester of children, to keep that in mind too now, got sentenced to anywhere from 40 to 175 years. Listening, the judge said herself, I'm giving you your death sentence. You know what I've said? I said it yesterday. I'll start off again by saying this man needs to be thrown under the jail with the sodomites for the rest of his natural days with his disgusting, despicable self. But the Michigan State University president has tendered her resignation. And you got some people that actually believe that's the wrong decision for her to make. I am not one of them. She needs to go. She's gone. Good riddance. Matter of fact, there needs to be an investigation as to whether or not her or others may have been complicit in all of this. And that might require, I'm not talking civil because we know civil cases are coming down the pike. I'm talking criminal. I mean, you can't protect children. Who are you going to be willing to protect? You got to be kidding me. But I'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. And, of course, gambling and the National Basketball Association. We'll touch on that as well. All of that in just a few minutes. But the first order of business is the Hall of Fame. Because yesterday a few guys got in. Jim Thome's of the world, Trevor Hoffman's of the world, Guerrero's of the world, people like that. They got in. What I cared about was Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Barry Bonds had 53.8% of the vote. What do you need, Nuno? Like 75% to get in? 74%, 75%? Barry Bonds got 53.8% of the necessary vote for the Baseball Writers Association of America. 53.8% last year. He got 56.4% this year. Clemens got 54.1% last year. He got 57.3% this year. Neither made the Hall of Fame, but they're getting closer. Here's my belief. Barry Bonds should have been in the Hall of Fame. He's really probably the greatest hitter we've ever seen. He was a Hall of Famer before steroids invaded the sport. And guess what? Regardless of what you may say, bringing up the cream and the clear and how he was exposed for using that, never failed a drug test. The bottom line is when it came to Barry Bonds, he was a Hall of Famer who didn't need the steroids. I understand that other people, you got a whole bunch of people out there that feel you cheat. It don't matter what. I don't look at it that way. I think back to the Mitchell report that came out in 2007. I think about the 103 names that were on that list. How many of them smacked 600 home runs? Or in Barry Bonds' case, more than 700. How many of them did that? I mean, if you got a whole bunch of people doing stuff, but guess what? It didn't work for them. It worked for him. And by the way, it was because he was great before that. Not to mention the fact I'm going to take into consideration excerpts from the Game of Shadows book written by Lance Williams and Mark Fenner-Rawada. When they wrote about how Bonds was a Hall of Fame already, but jealous of what Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were receiving in terms of attention, endorsements, and what have you. Major League Baseball clearly didn't mind because guess what? Chicks aren't the only one who love the long ball. So do the fellas. And everybody gravitated back to baseball because of the cancellation of the World Series in 1994. And you had lost your fan base. And by virtue of losing your fan base, it was going to take something special to get them back. And Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa brought them back. And the acclaim that they received along the way had Barry Bonds scratching his head saying, wait a minute, I'm better than both of these brothers. And y'all ignoring me. I'm smacking 30 home runs, stealing 30 bases a year. Y'all ain't saying anything about me. I'm a perennial gold glover. Y'all ain't saying anything about me. I'm considered one of the best players ever right now. Y'all ain't saying anything about me. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to entertain going a different route. And that's what he did. I don't mind an asterisk put next to his name. I don't mind somebody identifying the fact that he was associated with the steroids era, and by virtue of that it was tainted to some degree. But I don't think you take away the 700-plus home runs he smacked. I don't think you take away the greatness that he put on display, showcasing for you that he's one of, if not the greatest ever. I don't think you do that. I happen to believe the Roger Clemens situation is a tad bit different. I have never, and I want to emphasize this, because I remember, I think the year was back in 2013, when Roger Clemens was acquitted on all charges, when the government took him to court. I believe that was like June 18th, 2012. He was acquitted on all charges that he lied to Congress 4 years earlier, back in 2008, when he insisted he never used steroids or human growth hormones. I got to confess something to y'all. It's going to be a shock for you with what I'm about to tell you. I actually looked at an old article in the New York Times, and I see Roger Clemens, all of his sons hugging him. I got to tell you, that's a beautiful scene. I got to tell you, looking at that picture reminded me, I'm not one of these people that ever thought that Roger Clemens deserved to be in jail. I never liked the fact that the government went after him and tried to put this man in prison. I mean, he was faced with so many charges. If he had gotten convicted on all counts, he would have faced up to 30 years in federal prison. Now, come on. He doesn't deserve that. He never deserved that. But does Roger Clemens deserve to be banned from the Hall of Fame? Absolutely, for one reason and one reason only: sheer stupidity. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Mark McGwire was summoned to Capitol Hill, as was Sammy Sosa, as was Rafael Palmeiro. Barry Bonds, there was a 7-year investigation before you ultimately got him on one charge of trying to obstruct an investigation on PED use. That's all you got on him after 7 years. Roger Clemens was home minding his damn business. And because he was upset about the Mitchell report, he had to come out and emphatically deny and didn't dare anybody to summon him up to Capitol Hill. That's just stupid. That's just stupid. I mean, if for no other reason than camera time, you know Congress is going to summon you up there once you dared them to. That was just stupid. Just clear, sheer stupidity. And let me bring up the wife. And by the way, when I mention Roger Clemens' wife, I'm not casting any aspersions on her whatsoever. She's a fabulous looking woman. And the fact that she admitted under oath that she got steroids injected into her by McNamee, the former strength and conditioning coach that Roger Clemens used. There's no crime. She wasn't playing baseball. And obviously it worked for her because she looked good and took care of herself. And that was one of the components that she used to have herself in tip-top shape. But if McNamee is injecting the wife in the master bedroom with steroids, and somehow around the same time as when Roger Clemens, who was once considered past his prime after playing with the Red Sox, suddenly looks all world for the Yankees and the Houston Astros, and even for the Toronto Blue Jays for a lesser degree, and it happens to coincide with the same time that she's getting steroid shots in the master bedroom from the same strength and conditioning coach. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. That's more than a mere coincidence to me. I mean, I'm sorry to use the analogy, but if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it ain't a damn mongoose. It's a duck. Sorry. My only point about Roger Goodell is this. Roger Clemens. I apologize. My only point about Roger Clemens is this. I'm not even getting into the PED use. Because, look, plenty of people that use PEDs weren't getting it done. I'm sitting there and I'm embarrassed by some of the dudes who've gotten busted for using PEDs and they look like straight garbage while they were drugged up. So clearly the drugs didn't get it done for you. So I'm not going to sit up there and leave people out of the Hall of Fame when they were clearly better than most of their contemporaries, particularly in an era where most of that stuff wasn't being tested for anyway. And practically everybody was taking it like they were taking a bag of Skittles. What I'm getting on Roger Clemens about, unlike the other guys, is this. Nobody was bothering him. All he had to do was shut the hell up and stay home and live his life in a retirement. No one was bothering this man. And he wanted to open his mouth and try to be all defiant. He brought all of that on himself. Barry Bonds didn't bring that on himself. Andy Pettitte didn't bring that on himself. Mark McGwire, who don't know how to plead the fifth, and Sammy Sosa, who suddenly needed a damn interpreter when he showed up to Capitol Hill, and Rafael Palmeiro, who wagged his finger at Congress. They didn't bring that on themselves. Roger Clemens did. Barry Bonds should be in. Roger Clemens should be banned for stupidity. That's Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Don't touch that dial. I got more.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
Interesting story developing before I get to the calls right here at 888-729-3776, 888-SAY-ESPN. Interesting story has developed with the NBA. NBA outlines plan for nationwide sports betting. The NBA, I'm going to read from the article to make sure I misquote no one. Brian Windhorst wrote this yesterday. The NBA wants 1% of every bet made on its games in addition to other regulations, a request that could create massive revenue for the NBA and other sports leagues in the future. That's basically what they want. Spillane, an attorney for the NBA, testified in front of a New York State Senate committee and for the first time made it clear what the league's price would be to become a partner in legalizing the multi-billion-dollar industry. Spillane also said the NBA wants more widespread access to gambling for its fans, pushing for bets to be made legal on smartphones and kiosks and not just inside casinos and racetracks. That would increase the amount of wagering and in turn create more revenue for the league under its desired plan. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say this. I don't blame the NBA one bit for getting involved in all of this. I understand. It's your product. You're the one putting the product out there. And since gambling is a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's something that the NBA should consider, because outside of television revenue, meaning the contracts that these leagues have with the television networks, outside of revenue emanating from the television networks, there's no place else that you can generate this kind of revenue for your product. No place else other than gambling. And so it makes perfect sense why the NBA would want to get itself involved in all of this. I understand that. I'm not oblivious to it. I'm not blind to it. I totally get it. I see exactly where they're coming from. But we also need to understand that that law from 1992, where there was a federal ban on gambling, we need to also understand why people like myself and others were supportive of it. First of all, one would argue you bet on horses, not people. And now that you're doing this, once this happens, what's next? How are you going to stop people from gambling on college basketball and college football? Talk about scandals, point shaving, and all of that other stuff. Want to make a bet? We have to take that into consideration. By the way, since it's legalized, since you're pushing for it to be legalized, because that's what the that's what the NBA wants. And if there's a federal law that's instituted that legalizes gambling, how are you going to tell the players they can't gamble? How are you going to tell the coaches they can't gamble? And what kind of effect is that going to have on the sport? And oh, by the way, if you're going to legalize it and you have that kind of mentality, how in the hell can we say anything to Pete Rose? Shouldn't he be inducted into the Hall of Fame the next day? I think so. I think so. See, these are the kind of things that you got to think about. And you also got to think about it from this perspective. The advent of social media has made gambling on sports even more dangerous. Not because of folks in social media, but because of the players' insatiable appetite to resonate in the social media stratosphere. I read a story where it was talking about LeBron James makes over $125,000 per tweet. The man's got 40 million followers. You think he's tweeting for free? You think he's tweeting out of the kindness of his heart or this insatiable appetite he has to express himself? No, he's monetized it and he's getting paid. You think those Instagram posts and those Facebook followings are for nothing? And why do you think the other players want it? Because they realize it's a secondary or supplementary way to monetize their brand. So now that you got gambling into the equation, now you're talking about the potentiality of players and others communicating. And oh, by the way, we saw in the case of Kevin Durant that you could have fake accounts. All of these kind of things are the things you got to be concerned about. The kind of oversight it requires and beyond. I'm not saying no to it. I understand we live in a different world. I totally get that. What I am saying is it's dangerous. And to act like it's not is foolish. Especially in this day and age. If there was no advent of social media and there wasn't such excessive interaction on social media between athletes and folks on social media, that would be different. But you got guys that ain't getting paid that can't shut the hell up. They got to be on social media, defending themselves, explaining themselves, which I understand. Hell, I do it sometimes. But if you now tell them and show them a way where they can get paid for doing it, whether it's open or clandestine or otherwise, you got yourself a problem. You got yourself a problem. It ain't as clean as everybody's trying to act like it is. It's quite dangerous. And it's the kind of thing that needs to be considered, period.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance with more than 30 unique coverage options available. Progressive knows small business. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. 888-729-3776 is always the number to call up. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. By the way, some news that y'all may not have heard. Vince McMahon, head of WWE, remember him? Apparently, he's trying to get a football league. Got an announcement coming up at 3 o'clock. He's going to have his own football league, an alternative to the NFL. As far as I'm concerned, if it's not during the NFL season, he's got a chance. I think this nation is drunk on football. No matter the dissipated ratings because of the protest with Colin Kaepernick, no matter all the other stuff that took away from the game itself, football's still king. Still king. And people want it even when the games ain't being played. You talking about football. And don't be surprised at all if football in the spring resonates. It'll be interesting. That's why I agree with the NFL. And when they turned down that ad and everybody was in an uproar a few days ago, support our veterans, an ad encouraging you to stand for the flag. NFL's not speaking against anything. What they're saying is we don't want to be involved in this stuff no more. We're just trying to focus on football. Because either way you slice it, you can't win. You got proponents of the flag led by President Donald Trump, who talks about red, white, and blue and honoring our country, blah, blah, blah. You got another side of folks that aren't against the flag, but were kneeling during the flag to bring attention to racial oppression, police brutality, inequality, et cetera, before they got the issue hijacked. And then they were willing to point to racist rhetoric within the flag. So as a result of that, if you're the NFL, how can you win? You can't win. You can't win unless you completely remove yourself from the entire equation and let the world know we just focused on football. That's all we're trying to do. We just trying to provide a good football product. That's how you get money from everybody. That's how you cement mass appeal. That's what you're after. Which is why I don't knock the NFL for that. And Vince McMahon with his XFL league and all of that stuff, that's just going to be another component of competition that the NFL has to pay attention to. Stay tuned. Let's go to the phones at 888-SAY-ESPN. Gary in New York, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Gary. How are you?
Hey, Stephen A., how you doing? Big
I'm
fan.
good. Thank you for calling. Thank you. Go ahead.
And nobody speaks the truth in sports other than you, my brother.
Thank you, my brother. Go ahead, man.
Listen, this thing with the Hall of Fame, granted, these guys did what they did. It wasn't illegal until the league said it. So you go from that point from the league saying it's illegal and say anybody that got caught from here on, you're done. As far as Roger Clemens goes, I've never seen an idiot bigger than him. He was left alone. Nobody was worried about
bothering him,
him,
Gary. Nobody was bothering him. And he decided to open his mouth and speak up. I love the picture seeing his kids hug him, and I know they rooting for him and all that stuff. And he seems to have a wonderful family. God bless him. I hope he's living in peace and just enjoying the rest of his life. But he brought all of that upon himself and his family on his own. They were not bothering Roger Clemens the way they were bothering Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds and all of those guys. Roger Clemens did that to himself. They were not bothering him. They were not bothering him.
For somebody who only played once every 5 days, he should have kept his mouth shut.
I would think so, especially since he was retired by the time they brought his name up. I would think so. You're absolutely right. Appreciate the call, Gary. Thank you so much. Let's go to Jimmy in Indiana. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Jimmy?
How you doing, Stephen A? Congratulations on going nationwide.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
I wanted to make, hey, no problem. I wanted to make a couple of comments and then throw out my question, and I'll hang up and listen to what you got to say.
Go ahead.
Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa should be in the Hall of Fame. But my question is, if you do, as you said, you did what you did on the field as a player, and as stupid as Roger Clemens was for doing what he did, he should go into the Hall of Fame for what he did as a player on the field.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I just refuse to acknowledge it. And because I'm disgusted with him for being that stupid and defiant. You know what I think about when I think about Roger Clemens? I think about Lance Armstrong. I think about somebody who was so defiant, knowing they were lying. And it was like, listen, in the case of Lance Armstrong, if you retire and go away, you're left alone. This idiot came back. And then he admitted to Oprah, had he never came back, they wouldn't have been there having that conversation where he's admitting publicly that he had been lying for years. This dude was suing people and ruining lives because they were telling the truth about him. He was willing to ruin lives to hide his lies. Now, I'm not going to go that far with Roger Clemens. I'm only saying that, Roger Clemens, nobody was bothering you. And by the way, I don't sit up there and bring up Mrs. Roger Clemens using steroids as a negative. You want to work yourself out and do it. Ain't nothing wrong with it. That's her business. So if the Clemens family hears me anywhere, I certainly don't mean to come across as casting any aspersions on her. She was trying to look as good as she could look and be in great shape. And damn it, from what I remember seeing, she pulled it off. Props to her. She wasn't the one out there throwing 95-mile-per-hour fastballs near people's head. She wasn't doing that. She wasn't flicking bats at broken bats at Mike Piazza while he was walking to first base in the World Series. She wasn't doing that. And she certainly isn't the one that opened her mouth to bring extra scrutiny and attention to herself when all she had to do was shut the hell up and go into retirement. She didn't do that. That was her husband, with who I assume to be are extraordinary kids You got a wife, a beautiful kids, beautiful family, and you so busy thinking about your damn ego that you're going to open your mouth and be all defiant and bring unwanted scrutiny your way. You did that to yourself. That's what Roger Clemens did. And by the way, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, I'm not sure they're Hall of Famers without the home runs. Because I don't recall them being that great in any other area. Barry Bonds was great without the home runs. Sosa and McGwire were great because of the home runs. And by the way, I know he's a colleague of mine, and I think he does a great, great job on the air. I'm very happy to have Alex Rodriguez as a part of the ESPN family. But we haven't forgotten his lies either. Just for the record.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
888 say ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Let's go back to the phones, please. Got a couple of folks want to talk about a little sports betting based on R.J. Bell's interview on the NBA getting themselves involved in sports betting. Let's go to Kevin in New York. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Kev.
Stephen A., I think that the guy from Vegas was being a little disingenuous by when he made the comparison to going to the movies cost $15 and you could make that with $3 $5 bets. Gambling is a compulsion. Here are some numbers. I Googled it while I was on hold. 2.5 million compulsive gamblers, 3 million problem gamblers, 15 million at risk of becoming problem gamblers, and then you have 148 million that are low-risk gamblers. So you make gambling a little easier to do. You're creating a risk. I mean, these people lose everything.
Well, I agree with you there, but I agree with you there, Kev, but I have to ask you a question. Have you gambled before?
Sure.
All right. Have you been to a casino gambling before?
No. Casino gambling I do not like to do because I realized if I started doing it, I wouldn't be able to stop.
No. Don't be too literal with it. Here's what I mean. You've ever been to Vegas?
Twice.
Okay, if practically every hotel has a damn casino in it. So what I'm saying is, in other words, I don't mean like going traveling to a casino, you traveling to Atlantic City from New York. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about, hotel, and you got an hour or two to play with, and you were probably gonna go eat, or you were probably gonna go do something else, and then you said, you know what? I got $100 or $200 to lose, worst case scenario. I'd blow it anyway. Let me go to the blackjack table. That never happens.
I've seen it happen. The reason I don't do it, and this is not, I'm not some saint, but I know that I wouldn't be able to stop there. But what I picture is you're making it legal. You're not going to have to go to a casino. Someone at work will be like, all right, listen, I'll bet $10 this guy hits his next free throw.
Hey, Kevin, they're trying to get you. They're trying to get you to be able to do it on the kiosk. They're trying to get you to be able to do it on your smartphone or your tablets, like the iPad and stuff like that. They're trying to get all that going on. So you're right.
Free throw. I'll bet $5 he misses the next free throw. That's what your friend was saying. So then the guy hits the free throw and you're down 5. So you know what? Instantly, and this is the gambling mentality, you go, all right, you know what? Let me make that money back. I'll say that on the next play, nobody hits a three-pointer, and I get 2-to-1 odds on that, so I'll bet $5. And then you get unlucky and someone drills a three. The next thing you know, like after 4 or 5 minutes, it doesn't stop at one or two.
I understand it, but Kevin, you're still not answering the bigger question. How is that the league's problem? Because remember, all of that kind of stuff is going to keep the viewer ingratiated with their product. That means more eyeballs, more continuous. Like, for example, in the world of television, there's a category to sort of analyze what your viewing audience is doing, right? And you know what that category is, Kevin? Time spent watching. Some shows have 16, 18 minutes. Shows like First Take have 40. So time spent watching. Whereas, so if you get people to want to watch longer, that facilitates better ratings. It brings in more ad revenue because the advertisers know that people are spending more time watching. Not to mention the fact that it's more money for the networks, and ultimately it ends up being more money for the leagues, not only because they're getting a piece of the pie for the gamblers, but they're also getting a bigger piece of the television pie because they're charging networks more to have their product aired on their stations, on their network. So you could see how much money is involved. The bottom line is this. As morally as you sound, as morally upstanding as you sound, Are you throwing away the potential at all of those dollars because of it? Yes or no?
But I don't have the power in my hand.
That's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm asking you. So I know you don't have the power. I'm just asking you. You called up to the show, and I'm asking you to let me know what your stance is. How would you feel if you were in a position to shun it or to embrace it because of the exorbitant amount of dollars available? What would be your call?
Well, you probably will think that I have the luxury of saying this because it's an impossibility.
Good Lord, man.
But at some point, you have to measure the amount of money you need to have compared with the cost.
Now, Kevin, how hard was it to answer that question? You're not on national television. Everybody doesn't see you. We don't know your address. I asked you a simple question. You're couching it. You damn near sound like Max Kellerman. You're hedging. I mean, you're just sort of apologizing before giving your answer. You just had to answer the question. I have no problem with your answer. And I appreciate the call. Thank you.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.